Is the Pac-12 dead? That's the question. Is the Pac-12 dead? Is it done? So for those who don't know, according to CBS Sports a couple of days ago, the Pac-12 suffered a major blow in terms of their television rights deals. Basically, ESPN is no longer an option to take their primary media rights for Tier 1 games. They were looking to ESPN desperately to really just kind of bail them out. ESPN currently has agreements with the Big 12, the ACC, and the AAC, and the SEC. The SEC is obviously the primary one, their new deals. And they basically iced out the Pac-12 for primary games. They are not going to be contending for the top tier Pac-12 games. We don't know where the Pac-12 is going to go. Obviously, the CBS is going to be primarily promoting the Big Ten now. Same with Fox, honestly, because the Big Ten out-finessed the SEC and decided to use multiple networks. NBC is using Big Ten and Notre Dame. Pac-12 may go there, but again, they're not going to be the primary promotional conference now on any network. They weren't going to be on ESPN, but ESPN, based on the structure of them, has a little more leverage to just be able to promote multiple conferences the way they need to be promoted. Guys, the Pac-12 is in trouble. Pac-12 is in big, big trouble. USC and UCLA are going to join the Big Ten, I believe, by 2025. I can't remember if it's 2024 or 2025. According to certain reports, the Pac-12, the teams are looking to add are like San Diego State is one of them. And I get it, they're looking TV markets, but San Diego State? Seriously? How do you call them Power 5 at that point? How do you call the Pac-12 Power 5 if San Diego State joins them and then maybe UNLV? Mr. Jones, you suggest Pac-12, Big 12 merger. I heard a lot of reports on that. I think it's even more, I think it's a little more extreme. I think the Pac-12 just gets absorbed into the Big 12. The Big 12 goes and takes certain teams from the Pac-12. But you might be right. It could be a merger. We don't know how the Big 10 is going to operate yet. That's what remains a question here. But what happens if, say, Oregon goes to the Big Ten, and which they're interested in? Washington goes to the Big Ten. One of the Northern California schools goes to the Big Ten. They're interested in all three. Guys, even if Pac-12, Big 12 merger at that point, that conference is a second-tier conference to the Big Ten and the SEC. Because if the Big Ten adds those schools, the SEC is going to add Clemson, Florida State, Miami, provided the Big Ten doesn't add Miami because they are targeting them. I do believe they're going to try to get a North Carolina school, and I believe they're going to try to get a Virginia school. And when that happens, I mean, we're really, really, really close to a two-conference football league in being the SEC and the Big Ten. Now, can the Big 12 what's left of the Pac-12 and what becomes left of the ACC after I think the SEC raids it, which maybe in 10 years, who knows? Can those three form a hodgepodge, like third conference, so you have a Power 3? Maybe. But in all honesty, I mean, I really think the Pac-12 we already knew the Pac-12 was in trouble. They're in bigger trouble now. One, I don't know why they're adding San Diego State, because if you're thinking TV market, I mean, I would assume that the California market, but by just having Cal or Stanford, you get to cover the whole California market. I thought they would go somewhere like UNLV. I think UNLV is a sleeping giant. If any school is positioned to be a Power 5 school over the next 10 years, it's UNLV. Look at all the money that's going into Vegas right now and all the money that's coming out. I mean, Oakland moved 2 pro teams to Vegas. The Las Vegas Golden Knights, the NHL team. Vegas is the hotbed for professional sports now with sports gambling going national, because here's why this is happening. Yes, sports gambling is national and it's legal in so many different states, but the regulations are different state to state. And so it's simpler to operate for a lot of these companies to operate out of Vegas or Nevada, where they're a lot more familiar with how things are. So I think UNLV is where the Pac-12 should go. I think UNLV could be the secret team to save them. They are an underrated program, guys. They are a sleeping giant in college football. Heard it here first? Cedric Tillman is from Vegas, by the way. But as far as the Pac-12 goes, in general, guys, they're in real trouble. So the question becomes, will there be a Pac-12, Big 12 merger, as Mr. Jones, as you suggest, or do you think that the Big 12 just raids the Pac-12 for certain teams? Because I think that's possible. I mean, does the Big 12 really have any interest in Washington State or Oregon State? Or will they just add an Arizona State, a Utah, and I mean, does Colorado go back into the Big 12? I mean, that would be funny. I mean, think about this. Just less than less than 20 years ago, Colorado left the Big 12 for the Pac-12 because that seemed like the bigger conference. And now we're talking about maybe they'd prefer to be in the Big 12. What's going to happen with all of this? It's interesting. It's exciting. I love conference realignment talk. I don't like where it's going because I actually liked Dave wants the 40 best teams and have it a semi-NFL. I like college football being more national, spread across the country, making it interesting for different teams. That's obviously no longer happening. It's going to go by the wayside. But it is what it is. At least you'll get to see all the best talent competing against each other. My long-term prediction is that the non-SEC, the SEC and the Big Ten will be the only two conferences, and there are a few teams left out there that will be plucked, and they'll be their own Division I school program. The teams that'll be plucked, Notre Dame eventually is going to be forced to join a conference. And Travis says eventually, just like Pangea, it's going to be just one. Yeah, it'll be just one. It'll be, or maybe two, like it'll be one big league that the SEC and Big Ten agree to, and they're like the AL and NL. What's going to happen is the teams that are no longer in the SEC, that are not yet in the SEC and the Big Ten, which that will be, because right now there's 32 teams, and maybe it's like a 48 team conference. Let's just go through these, have a little fun. Oregon's going to the Big Ten would be one. Washington would be one. They would go to the Big Ten. Or yes, or Big Ten or SEC. Oregon, Washington, Florida State, Miami, Clemson, Virginia Tech or Virginia, and North Carolina. Those are the schools that would probably get into one of the big conferences. You might end up getting up to 8, so you might have a 40-team, one league, 20 and 20 on each one. Kind of intriguing how that will play out. I don't really see anybody else going, guys, honestly. Maybe Deion Sanders can politic and get Colorado in there. Who knows? But I'm not seeing it. I think your primary ones are Oregon, Washington, Clemson, Florida State, Miami, North Carolina, Virginia, or Virginia Tech. That's 7 right there. So that would get you to 39 to be in one of those two conferences. I mean, and Notre Dame. That's 8. That gets you at 40 right there. You got 20 and 20, agree to form one league, have an AL and NL basically in a Super Bowl. That's where college football is going to be in 20, maybe 20 years. What's very clear is the Big Ten. This move is just, it's in trouble. ESPN is smart to not want to carry their games. Don't forget that what undid the Big Ten was they signed this ridiculous long-term deal way back in 2009. Larry Scott considered it a genius move to lock themselves in for a long-term contract. It was the Scottie Pippen move of contract negotiations. What I mean by that, for those who don't know, in 1991, with 2 years left on his contract, Scottie Pippen decided he wanted an extension. Then the Bulls offered him like 7 years, $18 million. And Jerry Krause at the time was like, don't sign this deal. If you sign it, you're going to regret it, because when you're a free agent, you're going to be worth a lot more, because the Dream Team is about to happen in 92 and the NBA is about to explode in popularity. Scottie wanted the sure thing, signed the deal. Sure enough, 2 years later, one of the top 10 players in the NBA was, I don't even think in the top 50 of being paid, and he resented it. That was the Pac-12. They signed their TV rights deals and locked in for like a long, 15-year deal in 2009. And many people at the time thought it was a genius move to keep them solvent going forward. Well, what happened? College football exploded in revenue. The Big Ten network started. The SEC network started. They made great deals with streaming and different channels and networks. And the payout of the college football playoff happened. And the Pac-12 deal looked minuscule within a good 5 years. It was a disastrous move. Mr. Jones, the SEC holds college football together. Yeah, they man the Big Ten. Look, the Big Ten still, the SEC is a better conference, but the Big Ten still has holds college football together. Mr. Jones said SEC going to a 32-team league. I don't see 32. I don't think it's, again, you have to think about the revenue they're going to get versus the team they're going to add. You have to think about the money they would actually have to pay out versus the revenue that would bring in. So the revenue that would bring in has to outweigh the money they would pay out if they're going to add new teams. So that's where I'm seeing Clemson, Florida State, Miami, Virginia or Virginia Tech, and one of the North Carolina schools. I would guess North Carolina specifically. If the SEC had their pick right now and decided to go to 20 teams, they'd add Clemson, Florida State, Miami, Virginia Tech, and North Carolina. I think those would be the 5 teams they add. I would consider maybe Virginia, because even though Virginia Tech, I think, is a bigger brand, Virginia is very close in revenue. And with Virginia, you can actually get the DC market at that point. So a television market still can matter to a certain degree. But yes, the SEC. So I would see the SEC going to 20 teams. I don't see them going beyond that. I don't see any value that Oklahoma State brings them or any of the other Texas schools. I think they're totally fine with going to 20 and calling it a day. I think the Big Ten might go to 24. So we'll have to see how that happens. And if the Big Ten goes to 24, maybe the SEC goes to 24 and you have two 24-team leagues. Who knows? But it's going to be two 20-team leagues, two 24-team leagues. Eventually, you're going to have an AL and an L in college football. It's just going to happen. So we're going to have to see how that all plays out. Portions of the program brought to you by Vassy Lawn and Garden. Man alive, it's worth the drive. Industrial, commercial mowers, residential, they've got it all. Go to vassy.com to learn more. Vassy Lawn and Garden in Cleveland, Tennessee. Man alive, it's worth the drive. Thank you guys all for tuning in today. Dave will be back on Monday. We'll have the show again. This was a lot of fun. I'm glad you guys were able to do this with me. Again, it's tricky, but you guys on the chat room and on the message boards, y'all really help me out a lot when this happens. I want to thank Fred White for coming on the show. He helped out a lot too. You guys, this was a lot of fun. This was great. You all have a great weekend. Enjoy Cinco de Mayo. NFL draft's in the rear view. Spring practice is in the rear view. If you're a college football fan, all season is here. So we're just going to have some fun features happening over the next couple of months. But guys, we got some good ones. We got some fun ones. So please stick with us. We got a lot of great content. Please hit that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. We want to try to bring more and more people in. We're doing something really, really exciting here. So last message I'm going to read from Mr. Jones. What would be cool is if they made teams like Ohio State schedule a few SEC game and cross-conference games. Okay, Mr. Jones, I have to bring this up to you. Yes, the SEC is the toughest conference, but it is. I don't mean every SEC team has an easy schedule. Look at Georgia's schedule this year. It is a complete and utter laughable schedule. I think Ohio State has a harder schedule than Georgia this year. I think the Big Ten East teams have a tougher schedule than Georgia and maybe a tougher schedule than Tennessee because the SEC East is just it's a questionable division, to say the least. The SEC is the toughest conference. The East is a questionable division. The SEC East is the Big Ten West of the conference, just not as bad as the Big Ten West. So don't worry. So I get what you're saying with Ohio State schedule some SEC games. How about make Georgia schedule some SEC West games or just some games against elite Big Ten teams? Be interesting to see how that goes.